Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: we must rehumanize ourselves, Palestinian artist Slimane Mansour. Israel mulls ceasefire plan as progress reported. Israel discusses next steps in truce talks as Gaza desperation deepens. CFA puts Saudi Arabia at the heart of its Middle East expansion. Update 1 Israel, Hamas skirmish in Gaza as truce efforts pick up pace. We must rehumanize ourselves, Palestinian artist Slimane Mansour. Al Jazeera. Palestinian artist Slimane Mansour has spent over 50 years creating paintings that reflect the struggles of the Palestinian people. His work often addresses themes of censorship, violence against artists and journalists, and the erasure of Palestinian identity. Mansour believes that it is the job of the artist to create art honestly, regardless of the consequences. He argues that the Israeli government wants to control the narrative and suppress any alternative stories, which is why they target artists and journalists. Mansour's paintings, such as Rituals Under Occupation and Perseverance and Hope, depict the plight of Palestinians and symbolize the concept of sumud, or steadfastness, in the face of oppression. He believes that the fight for Palestinian rights is about rehumanizing the Palestinian people and achieving peace and equality between Palestinians and Israelis. Israel mulls ceasefire plan as progress reported. BBC. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been briefed on negotiations for a ceasefire deal in Gaza after reports of progress made in talks in Paris on Saturday. Protesters in Tel Aviv have called for the Prime Minister's resignation, with riot police on horseback charging demonstrators as they tried to make their way to Democracy Square. The negotiations aim to secure a ceasefire and the return of hostages, as well as the release of Palestinian prisoners held in Israel. Israel will send a delegation to Qatar for further talks this week. Israel discusses next steps in truce talks as Gaza desperation deepens. South China Morning Post. Israel's war cabinet has been discussing the next steps for negotiations towards a hostage deal and ceasefire in its war with Hamas, as concern deepens over the increasingly desperate situation faced by civilians in the devastated Gaza Strip. The United Nations has warned that 2.2 million people are on the brink of famine. The World Food Programme has said its teams inside the besieged Gaza Strip have reported unprecedented levels of desperation. CFA puts Saudi Arabia at the heart of its Middle East expansion. Bloomberg. The CFA Institute is aiming to double its number of members in Saudi Arabia to 1,000 over the next 3 years, as the country opens up its financial markets and looks to diversify its investment industry. The nonprofit organization is also seeking to grow the pool of candidates in the kingdom by 20% annually. Saudi Arabia has around 1,800 candidates planning to sit the CFA exams in 2019. The CFA is considering offering extra certifications in Arabic and is exploring ways to offer more training on Islamic finance. Update 1 Israel, Hamas skirmish in Gaza as truce efforts pick up pace. Yahoo! Over the weekend, Israeli troops continued to fight with Palestinian gunmen across the Gaza Strip. Both sides have been holding talks over a possible ceasefire to free hostages held by Hamas and bring some relief to the battered enclave during Ramadan. Despite the talks, Israel has stated that it will continue to destroy Hamas, and the Islamist faction has said that it will only agree to a ceasefire if it is permanent. US and UK carry out fresh strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. Washington Post. The United States and Britain carried out fresh strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen on Saturday night, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a statement, marking the largest military action against the militant group in weeks. The strikes, launched just before midnight local time, were carried out with the support of Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands and New Zealand, and hit underground weapons storage facilities, missile storage facilities, one-way attack drones, air defense systems, radars and a helicopter, Austin said. With all eyes on Gaza, Israel steps up demolitions of Palestinian homes. Al Jazeera. The Jerusalem municipality has demolished 87 homes in the occupied eastern part of the city since October 2014, in the wake of Israel's assault on Gaza. The total number of homes destroyed during the first 9 months of 2014 was 97. The demolitions are justified on the grounds that the homes are built without permits. However, Palestinians cannot obtain such permits for homes built in East Jerusalem. Palestinians are being forced to build without permits because the legal discrimination means that only majority Jewish neighborhoods are allowed to build new homes. The Israeli authorities have issued demolition orders for most of these homes. Home demolitions are illegal under international law unless they are necessary for military operations. However, Israel has created a legal structure to allow it to justify the demolitions. Angela Godfrey Goldstein, an Israeli co-director of a local organization trying to prevent the forced displacement of Palestinians, said that Fakhri Abu Diab, whose house was recently demolished, had been targeted because he is a human rights activist and the elected spokesperson of Silwan. City elections on February 27 could increase tensions. A West Bank settlement, re-established, symbolizes hardened Israeli views. New York Times. Homesh, an Israeli settlement that was dismantled in 2005, has become a symbol of the religious and right-wing politics in the West Bank. The settlement was re-legalized by the Israeli government last year, but the Supreme Court required the government to dismantle it again and ensure the safety of the Palestinians who own the land. Some ministers in the government of Benjamin Netanyahu are pushing for more settlements in the West Bank and the removal of Palestinians from Gaza to resettle there. Policy experts balk at Lula's row with Netanyahu. Deutsche Welle. Tensions between Israel and Brazil continue to rise following controversial statements made by Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva regarding the Israel-Hamas war. President Lula made controversial statements comparing the Israeli actions in Gaza to the Holocaust, leading to the Brazilian ambassador being summoned by Israel and subsequently recalled by Brazil. There are now media reports suggesting that Brazil might expel Israel's ambassador. The majority of Brazilians support Israel, and President Lula's comments have divided his own base. President Lula is known for his informal approach to foreign policy, which can sometimes lead to diplomatic tensions. Lula's row with Israel has divided his own base. Deutsche Welle. The diplomatic dispute between Israel and Brazil has escalated following recent comments by Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva relating to the Israel-Hamas war. Lula compared the situation in the Gaza Strip to that of Hitler's treatment of Jews. Israel has demanded an apology and threatened to ban Lula from the country unless he complies. Lula is unlikely to apologize, which could further damage Brazil's relationship with Israel and divide Lula's own supporters, as the majority of Brazilians support Israel. That's all for today's news update from the 6 Dimensions. I'm Dr. Six, your resident observer, here to bring you the latest stories from around the world. Let's recap what we've learned today. Palestinian artist Slimane Mansour has been using his art to reflect the struggles of the Palestinian people and fight against censorship and oppression. Israel is considering a ceasefire deal in Gaza, with negotiations taking place in Paris and further talks scheduled in Qatar. The desperate situation in the Gaza Strip has led to discussions about a hostage deal and ceasefire, as well as concerns about the potential famine. The CFA Institute is looking to expand its presence in Saudi Arabia as the country opens up its financial markets. Israel and Hamas continue to skirmish in Gaza, with talks of a ceasefire ongoing but both sides remaining firm in their positions. The US and the UK have carried out fresh strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen, with support from other countries. Israel has been increasing its demolitions of Palestinian homes in occupied Jerusalem, leading to international condemnation. The re-establishment of an Israeli settlement in the West Bank symbolizes the hardened views of the Israeli government. Tensions between Brazil and Israel have escalated following controversial remarks by Brazilian President Lula da Silva, leading to a diplomatic dispute between the two countries. Now, let's dive into some analysis. It's clear that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains a complex and deeply entrenched issue. The ongoing negotiations for a ceasefire and the return of hostages are just one piece of the puzzle. The desperate situation in Gaza, with millions on the brink of famine, highlights the urgent need for a resolution. On the other hand, we see Saudi Arabia taking steps to diversify its investment industry, opening up opportunities for organizations like the CFA Institute. This reflects the changing dynamics in the Middle East and the desire for economic growth and stability. Meanwhile, the situation in Yemen continues to escalate, with fresh strikes against Houthi targets. This conflict has been largely overshadowed by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it is no less important. The involvement of multiple countries highlights the complexity of the situation and the potential for wider regional implications. And finally, we have the diplomatic dispute between Brazil and Israel. President Lula's controversial comments have divided his own base and strained relations between the two countries. It's a reminder that diplomacy requires tact and nuance, and that even informal remarks can have serious consequences. So, what are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions for me? I'd love to hear your perspective and continue the discussion. Leave your comments down below and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.